Welcome to the Maker's Playbook, the podcast where we talk all about what it's really like to make a living from the things you make. I'm your host, Rebecca Ikes-Kara. Hello. It feels so good to be back with new episodes, doesn't it? I'm curious though, after our first ever try at a season break, what do you think? Do you all binge your podcast and want everything dropped all at once as one big season? Or do you like listening to new content each week? Or do you find that you binge one podcast even if it drips out once a week and then switch over to another one? What's going on? What's the vibe out there? Very seriously, send me a DM on Instagram at The Maker's Playbook and let me know. Because I want to keep trying new things and tweaking our approach to best suit your reality. And without your feedback, I only have my solo assumptions over here on this side of the microphone. And we all know what happens when people make assumptions, right? Not to mention, spoiler alert, as one of my favorite online educators, Tyler J. McCall, says, the secret to business is really that it's just one big experiment. You try something, you track the data, you look at that data, and you make an informed decision on the next something that you're going to try. And you look at that data. He likens all of this to the scientific process. But that's a conversation for another time. Because first up, today, we have a wonderful chat with Greta Michel, who is doing all kinds of soda firing experimenting down in the Caribbean. And we've got lots to talk about. So let's get right into it. Hey, Greta, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Rebecca. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited you're here. For people who don't know you, how would you introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Greta. I am a Caribbean person. I live in Trinidad and Tobago, happily. And I am a potter. I call myself a Caribbean potter because I don't just want to represent my home. I believe that the Caribbean as a whole is my home. So, I think that's what I would call myself. Oh, and I love to soda fire. And I love working in porcelain.
Well, and we are going to get to talking about the soda fire kiln that you have. It's complete now, right? You just finished it?
Yes.
Amazing. Well, tell me though a little bit about is there a particular style you would talk about for the Caribbean pottery scene different than super traditional British pots? I can see a visual of like a leach jug or something like that. Is there a style that you feel like is specific to the Caribbean or you?
I think the pots that I see coming out of the Caribbean, different islands, they definitely would have a touch of all over. Because remember, we have a history of colonization. So we've had British here, we've had French here, we've had the Spanish here. And before even they came, our islands were inhabited by indigenous people. So we have a little sprinkling of everybody.
Yeah.
And all of that comes together with our vibe and how we view things.
Well, in the Caribbean, I feel like I've not been to Trinidad and Tobago yet, but the places in the Caribbean I've been to, I find that merging of so many different cultures in such a small geographic space to be such a potent, to me, it's like a culture unto itself. It's separate. I don't experience it as like the merging of other cultures I know, but as it's like its own entity.
Yes, definitely.
Well, what is it like? The first thing I think about when we connected online was how much more difficult, I presume, this is my assumption, being on an island in the middle of an ocean. What are the challenges as a potter? I'm thinking as far as supplies, and you've just built this kiln, and everything pretty much has to be flown into you, yeah?
Yes. And no. We have clay here, naturally, but the challenge with that is because we don't have people who are interested in refining clay, because I don't want to have go digging clay and storing clay and refining clay. I don't want that. I want to go into your supply store and say, okay, I want that, and bring it home and wedge it up and use it. Okay?
Yeah.
And I can tell you that for sure because I've done it. I've tried it. And I don't have the space and I don't have the time or the desire for that. So yes, bringing sourcing materials can be a challenge, but thankfully I have I've actually found it easier than some would think, because I have a pottery supply person. She does the bringing in, and this year though I decided to bring in clay for myself, and it actually wasn't much of a hassle. So yeah.
Nice. Because I was just thinking all of the different, well, let's talk about this kiln. I mean, that was a long time in the making, right? When you were building your own soda kiln?
Well, I didn't build it from scratch. Mm-hmm. What I did was my mentor, Bunty O'Connor, she, long time ago, actually 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, she had a pottery place called Ajupa Pottery. And she had 2 kilns that she brought in from Stoke-on-Trent. And when she closed her pottery shop, they were just there. And, she kept on telling me, especially when I started the soda fire, she kept on telling me, come get one of these, and you can use it to soda fire. So I was going to build the kiln from scratch. And she said, why are you going to do that? And there's a perfectly good, because the thing was, it's Stoke-on-Trent. So, it's that kind of old iron.
Yeah, it's a solid place to get a kiln from. I feel like maybe heard of them just a little bit.
The thing was manufactured from the little tag. The thing was manufactured in 1970s. So, and the bricks were still in good condition. The structure was still in good condition. So we got a high-ab, we brought it home, had somebody do the welding and fixing up the welding, and I just did the rest.
Just did the rest, she says, as if it was no big deal. Like, it's like popping a cake in the oven, no problem.
The interesting thing is, when I first started the soda fire, I actually did that. We bought an old electric kiln and we converted it to soda. Mm-hmm. So while this was new, it wasn't, unfamiliar.
Sure. Well, that's what I feel like for so many potters, the having to figure out just all the different mechanics and the different, there's the problem solving skills of self-employed ceramicists who have their own studios, who have their own kilns, who are reclaiming their own clay or building their own kilns. I mean, there's so many different sets of knowledge that you need to have just to get a finished piece that have nothing to do with sitting down on a wheel or sitting at a wedging table or, I mean, it's like, holy crap.
Yeah, and sometimes when customers ask the question, well, why is that cost so much? And I'll have to look up to the sky and take a breath, because the response that you really want to give them, it will be inappropriate. So I try. One of the things I try to do is, especially on my Instagram feed, is try and do some process. And that's why when I was doing the kiln, I made sure in my stories that I put up, progress, so that they'll get an idea of some of the difficulties involved in what we do.
Yeah.
Because, a lot of people think that, wheel throwing is easy. And it's not until they get a hand at the wheel that they realize that, this is this is harder than I thought.
Right.
Yep. They think that hand building is just, instinctive and intuitive and just, slap it together. But then, when they actually do it, that's when they realize that it's more to it than, yeah.
And everything cracked and nothing stayed together. And, yep. Well, and I do think, to your point, some people I don't think are intending to be rude with those questions. They just don't
Yeah,
know. And you just have to educate them. And as soon as, I think for many people, as soon as they're educated around it, they go, oh my gosh, you're undercharging actually.
yeah, and that's why I don't, I don't respond. I don't react. I respond. Because if you react, then you'll be rude and inappropriate. But when you respond, then you educate and you help them to recognize that what we do as potters. It's not just sit and it's not ghost.
I mean, I married a potter, and no, that's still not happening. It's the question we get every single time we try to explain to somebody. Like if I go back and forth with saying Francesca's a professional ceramicist, and then they look at me like, and I say potter, and then if they still look at me, I'm like, the movie Ghost. They're like, oh, is that how you met? Like, no, that's not what happened, guys. Lord. All right. Well, tell me about, since you mentioned communicating with customers, for you in the islands, is that a lot of tourism and in-person people coming to visit and expanding a network that way? Or are you pretty much doing all shipping and all online sales?
I actually don't have a lot of foot traffic, and that's by choice. My studio is a space outside my home, and I still want that to be like a sanctuary. So if I have customers come in, they have to come in by appointment. And it's like maybe one or two people, and it has to be that we have been interacting for a while. I'm not big on strangers coming home.
Smart.
And of course, in the last 2 years, I've stopped that because COVID. Yeah. So, but I do a lot of work online. Prior to last year, I would have done a few, I don't want to call them markets. There would have been an open studio that I would do with friends and mentors, and my mentor Bunty at her space. Mm-hmm. And then I would have done a market, or if I was invited to some other pop-up, I would do that. In the last 2 years, last year and this year, it's been online, it's been through Instagram, word of mouth, that kind of thing.
How much did that shift? To me, having the markets and the pop-ups is a completely different business model than the online side of things, right? And everything that you have to manage with shipping and communication and explanation and customer service, like you were saying. So has that been a pretty steep learning curve and affecting pricing with shipping and all of the extra logistics you've had to sort out? Or was that kind of a piece already and now it's just a bigger piece than it used to be?
It was a piece already. So now it's a bigger piece. There wasn't really a learning curve because between the two of us, I actually prefer the online to the pop-ups and the markets, because with the pop-ups and the market, I have to prepare myself mentally and emotionally and physically to smile and meet people, and and my anxiety is high, and that kind of thing.
Sure.
And usually what happens is I talk to people, yes, and I smile and interact with customers, yes, during these times. But my husband is always with me at these markets because he knows what will happen. So, to help to calm me, and he would do a lot of the talking because he knows a lot about what I do.
Sure.
And he's very supportive that way. So for all the markets and the open studios that I attended, he was always there, and he would always engage with the customers unless they, ask me directly a question, or unless he was taking a walk through the market, he could stretch his legs. But yeah, I like this better for my anxiety.
Sure.
And then as of last year, interestingly enough, a few shops reached out asking to stock my work. So I had that as well as my online sales.
That's wonderful. Well, I think that's wonderful. Have you enjoyed having those relationships?
Yes, actually, yeah. Because these are brands that I followed on social media, and I really, respect what they stand for. So I was really happy that they actually, wanted to carry my work.
Yeah. Well, and is that like a relationship where once the pieces sell, then they have a commission and you get a sale, or are they buying pieces outright and then they just handle everything and you don't have to worry about it?
One takes a commission. One shop takes a commission, and the other two, I pay like a monthly rental.
Mhm.
So I have pieces there, and they sell, and then they just transfer the sales to me. So they don't have to take a cut from that, and I don't have
Gotcha.
to lift the price so that I can cover the
Right.
commission.
Yep. Which is effectively, I feel like, kind of the same. The commission to me
Yeah,
always is the cost of the shop to have their own marketing and their rent and the
yeah,
staff
yeah.
that's there to have the shop open. And, I know a lot of potters get up in arms about the percentage of the commission. And I think actually it's a pretty decent deal for their business costs
Mhm.
compared to yours and all of ours. Yeah. Well, and I'm fascinated to know more around how the online sales are working, given that you do enjoy that more, because I feel like so many potters I talk to feel like they have to sell online and they have to ship work because that's just the only way people are seeing it done. When in reality, they actually hate the packaging and the shipping and the logistics of all of that. So I would love to learn more about like how you're making that system work the best for you and the lifestyle that you want to have.
I actually don't mind because, especially with the shipping, I think I'm pretty good with shipping work and making sure that it gets to where it's going safely. What I like about the shipping too is that I get to put little extras in the box that nobody's expecting, so that when they open it up, wherever it goes in the world, when they open it up, they get a little piece of home. In addition to the pot that they ordered.
I'm not going to ask you what those are because I don't want to. I don't want to ruin the surprises. So I'm going to resist the urge. I'm like, okay, think of a different question, Rebecca, because I don't want
No,
to.
I don't mind sharing. I don't mind sharing. What I usually do is, I believe that in order for me to succeed as a potter, I need to collaborate with other brands, other small businesses, especially if I'm shipping something abroad or shipping something to the States or Canada or wherever. It shouldn't just be that they're getting a pot from me. I want them to get something from one of our other brands that are here, because we have some really good brands. So we have good coffee, we have good teas, we have good cocoa, chocolate. Our cocoa is ranked as one of the best in the world. So why not let somebody else experience that? I've partnered with a tea brand and a coffee brand, and I am currently working on a chocolate brand, so that when I ship a mug, they get, in addition to that, maybe a sample of coffee or a sample of tea, a sample of hot chocolate.
Love
Along
that.
with pieces. Yeah.
You really should be employed by the Trinidad Tourism Board because you're just bringing people like, if I eat that chocolate, I'm going to be like, all right, next up, next vacation. This is where like I need
Yes,
to go get
I,
more of this.
you will. Trust
Yeah.
me on the chocolate. You will.
Yeah. Oh, I believe you. 1,000%. 1,000%. Usually the ones we know the most. Now, granted, with all due respect to my heritage, like Belgium is also pretty high up there for the chocolate, but everybody
Yeah.
knows that. Everybody knows Swiss
But,
chocolate. Everybody knows Belgian chocolate. So it's usually the ones that like nobody knows about that are actually.
and the interesting thing is, when they eat the Belgium chocolate and they eat the Swiss chocolate, the question they need to ask is, where are the beans coming from? The beans are coming from the Caribbean and South America.
Yep.
What are those beans? Some of them are coming from Africa, but a lot of them are coming from South America and Trinidad and Tobago and the Caribbean.
which circles back to colonization, which is a whole different topic for a very different podcast.
Another podcast.
But let's just acknowledge that, and everybody should go Google some historical facts. Oh, goodness. Well, what originally drew you to ceramics? How did you get involved?
I didn't start off as a ceramic person. I was a painter. I was doing oil painting and enjoying it immensely. But I think clay has always been somewhere inside, looking, just waiting for that moment. Because of where I grew up. I grew up in one of the country areas. Spent a lot of my childhood there under the hand of my grandmother and my grandfather. And I say that because my grandmother was very crafty. Floral decorations, basketry, cake decorating, baking, cooking, the works. It was a tradition every Saturday morning. I would wake up early because that was baking day. And she would light up the dirt oven and prepare it for her bread baking and all of that. So that oven, I love that oven. I loved being part of the sweeping and the prepping for the baking in that oven. And one of the things she used to do actually too was take me along with her to her craft groups to keep me out of trouble. That was her way of keeping me out of trouble. So when I started, yes. So when I started my degree in 2012, one of the things I knew I was going to do was I was going to take the ceramics elective.
Okay.
There was no question. I was just waiting on when it was my turn to take ceramics 1 as an elective. And the first part of the course, it was hand building. I didn't get along too well with hand building in the beginning, but the second part of the course was the wheel. And I sat down at the wheel. I touched that clay on the wheel, and it was like a light came on. I came home, and I think from that moment on, I did not get up from the wheel. I used to actually run away from whatever other course I had and go into the ceramics room to throw.
Yeah.
It actually changed the whole dynamic of my final exhibition, because in the beginning, my final exhibition was going to be about painting. It became about clay.
Mm. Well, that was good. That was my immediate question. I thought of so you went in to study painting, and yet you were waiting to take the ceramics elective. So what was it? Why painting in the first place?
I liked painting when I started off my art journey. It was painting. I wanted to take this ceramics elective because, that was just another aspect of the whole art journey. It wasn't so much that, yes, I was going to switch to ceramics. I just wanted to take it because I knew I would enjoy it. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I was going to enjoy it that much.
Got it. Because for me, what I think about with my own story is like when I switched out of music to arts, I switched to graphic design because that was like the employable art, right? That was the safe path, even though I don't really want to spend that much time on a computer. I don't want to sit in an office from 9 to 5 every single day. And I mean, now I don't. Then it was just the normal. I didn't have in my mind, I could start a business and go work for myself. It was like, what is the thing I can do that somebody will hire me for and I will get a job, but also has some amount of creativity built into it. And so it's just funny how we start in one place and yet get pulled one way or another someplace else.
Mm-hmm. Because when I did my art degree, I was already teaching. I was already employed as a full-time teacher. So I was going to school part-time. I was just doing the degree for me to have that piece of paper that says that, yes, I am qualified, because, your employer wants that piece of paper that says that you are qualified to teach art, even though you have been doing it for
the decades of children who learned from you should be the qualification alone, but
so it was really about that. I didn't think about it as looking for employment. I was already employed. Now, however, I am looking or making plans to get out and get into my studio practice full time.
I was just going to ask, so you're still teaching, you're still
Yes.
managing both.
Yeah.
So summer's like the dream, basically.
Yeah. Actually, it might seem a little strange to say this, but this past year plus has been wonderful for me in terms of my studio practice because we've been teaching online. Our classes have been staggered in such a way that we don't spend the entire day staring at the screen. So I've had more time to work on my studio practice. I don't think I would have been able to do the kiln if I didn't get the time that I got last year and this year. So I don't know what's going to happen in September when we have to go out into the physical school. I will probably be going, but I'll be going with tears in my eyes, kicking, screaming, asking, like kids, do I really have to go?
Mom, don't make me.
Yeah.
Your kids are pushing you out the door. Mom, you have to go. You have to go.
Yeah. Yes. It will be like that.
Love it. I love it. Well, did the time that COVID brought this last year and a half give you time to kind of look at how it could potentially, like what could work or what you still need to figure out and do, one, for your family, for your life, just the pragmatic logistics of like, okay, if here's the point in which I can leave the full-time teaching job?
Yes, I've actually spent more time thinking about it, and I think I'm closer to that end of the spectrum than I was to the other end of the spectrum. I can't go, but I'm seeing what I need to do in order to get to that point.
Anything that's top of mind in particular? Because I feel like this is the big question for everybody, right? Is like, when, short of just jumping off a cliff and taking a risk and hoping you figure it out before you fall, like your reality is very different than the person coming out of undergrad in their 20s with roommates who can, like, you've got kids, you've got a family, like you can't just, maybe not necessarily just say, okay, I'm going to go try this thing and we'll figure it out as we go along, because you have people relying on you.
Yeah. And I think for me, I think a big part of it was, okay, if I leave, I'm a person who likes to be independent, especially financially. So it would be really hard for me to have to depend wholly solely on my husband's salary. I mean, he would do it in a heartbeat, but it would be hard for me. As I like to say, I must be able to maintain myself in the manner to which I've become accustomed. Once I have that completely figured out, I'm gone.
And then we have part 2 on the podcast.
And then we have part 2 of the podcast.
Wonderful. Well, is there anything that you feel like with your business now and with the online sales, is there something that is that solid, kind of keeps the business going? You will always and forever make mugs because they sell so much, or you started doing some classes in your studio, or am I making that up? Did I see that?
Yeah, we have, well, should I say we had? What I do is I call them one-day workshops. Because I teach, I cannot teach a bunch here and then come in and have to teach a big bunch here for an extended period of time.
Yep.
What I started doing a few years ago was that I would have, as I call them, one-day workshops, where I have a very small group, 8 for the most, and I teach them some aspect of clay. Whether I teach them intro to wheel throwing, or we do some hand building. Last year, before we went into lockdown, I was able to do one workshop, which was Kurinuki, the hollowing out, and they enjoyed that. This year, again, when we thought things were opening up, I had my workshop scheduled, planned out. I was able to get one in, before we went into lockdown again.
Okay.
So I did spoons this year. And the nice thing about that one is I was able to incorporate different techniques that you would use in clay just by making spoons.
Yeah.
So they're catering to introducing people to clay, helping them to just find that little zen for a few hours, that little space of zen for a few hours, and they get to make something. And then I glaze it and send it back for them.
And do you feel like you have a lot of people that the same people keep coming back because they're getting these little tastes and want to keep going with you, or is it local tourists?
I can't really say, because for when I started, was it 2018, 2019? Yeah, 2018, sure. 2019, late in 2018. And then I made up my mind, all right, this is what I was going to do. This is how I was going to go forward with this. In 2019, I don't think I had any workshops because we were doing some work on the house, and I was expecting my first grandbaby. So our focus was there. So we didn't do any workshops in 2019. 2020 at the beginning, we planned out a full year of workshops. We only got to do one. This year again, I planned out a full year of workshops. Yep. So far, I've only gotten to do one. I don't know what the rest of the year will hold.
Hopefully. Yeah. Go get vaccinated, people.
Yeah. And I think even if we do get to have one, it will be a small group because anxiety and COVID.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, the transition back, so as an extrovert who has never had anxieties around social situations, I mean, there's a reason I was comfortable getting into wedding photography, right? 200 people in a ballroom that you have to become best friends with in an hour so they like you for the rest of the day. Totally fine. Whereas this year, it's been I haven't been around 200 people in a year and a half. I don't really want to be in the middle of that dance floor with your sweat rubbing all over me. It's been a mental battle of working through for the first time in my life. Actually, I don't want to be around people as much. Now I understand all my introverted friends are looking at me haha, welcome to the world.
Yeah. Because for want of a better phrase, I don't like people. I like my space. I can be home in here for the entire week, for an entire month, and I don't mind. So this lockdown did not affect me the way it affected a lot of people around me. Mm-hmm. Online teaching wasn't as difficult for me as it was for a lot of my other colleagues because I was home. Mm-hmm. I was in my space. My husband even commented, he said, I don't think we really appreciate what other people are going through because, we are quite happy to be here in this little bubble. And maybe one day we will understand this need to go outside. And so, yeah. I don't know what's going to happen. Like I said, I don't know what's going to happen come September morning because, if going to the grocery is like preparing for Mockingjay, Pat, whatever, what's going to happen?
I know. I will say I have to backtrack a little bit because when Francesco and I were stuck in separate countries, I was a very angry person about COVID. But like you said, once you're with your husband, once we were back together, it was kind of I'm good. We can be in lockdown for a while now. We're good. This is happy space. But before that, I had some strong feelings.
But I can imagine.
Well, as you've gone through this journey, from teaching and then studying yourself and transitioning from painting to clay and just the whole gamut of the years of all of this, what has surprised you? What's different than you thought it would be when it comes to being a maker and building a business and making a living from what you make?
I think sometimes I'm still surprised by the response to my work. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I still suffer, I think, from imposter syndrome That's a critical thing where you look at your work and you say, and you're not in your mind. You think that you're not there yet. You're not. And then people will reach out to me and say, "Oh, I love your work. Or, this is so beautiful when you post it on social media or whatever. Or is this available? Or that kind of thing." And sometimes I would be looking around to make sure it's not somebody else I'm talking to. Yeah. So like recently, the last few weeks, I had a shop update. It was like my first official shop update on my website.
Mm-hmm.
Because even though I had, for years, I had a website, I really wasn't paying much attention to it. Last year, I decided that, this has to change because I can't have a website and it's not paying for itself and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So I got really serious about the website. All of that was part of the move towards that second phase of life. And I did a shop update. When I published it, I turned to my husband and I said, suppose nobody buys anything. And he looks at me and he said, I don't know, in his typical calm way. And that kind of talked me down off of that ledge. Mm. And then when later in the day, the phone started to ding and I started getting messages about, all right, you have one new order. And I was like, what?
Right.
So that surprises me.
Mm-hmm.
Response to my week.
When he asked you, so when you asked, what if nobody buys? And he said, I don't know. I love that response in so many ways because it's not the automatic, like, oh, of course people will buy. How you're feeling is silly and full. Like he didn't pass off what you were feeling as like nonsensical. It was like, well, what does happen if nobody, what's the worst case scenario? And I find if you can live with the worst case scenario and still keep moving forward, then why not? Right?
And that's the nice thing about him is that, like I said, he's very supportive of my work, and I can call him and show him a piece that I'm working on and say, what do you think of this? And I would get an honest response. I wouldn't get the off cuff, oh, that's nice. I would get, you look at it, you would ask me, why is that like that? And is the handle supposed to be crooked, or is that supposed to look like that? Is the glaze supposed to do that? What are you aiming for? I would get that kind of response so that when he does tell me, oh, that's nice, I can trust that. Yeah.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Anything that you've found also helps with that? I don't know. Is it a matter of just continually having to go through that arduous process of putting yourself out there and having the response that then affirms, yes, your work is lovely, people want to keep doing it? Or is there anything else that you kind of have like come to find that helps with that imposter syndrome?
I think a lot of times I have to let myself off the hook. I have to not be so hard on myself. I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes from. That I am my worst critic, my own worst critic, because I believe that whatever I put out into the world, it's going to be there for a long time. Ceramics, even if the glass breaks or the tumbler breaks or the mug breaks, the shards will tell on me. I think that's where it comes from. And it's one of the reasons I like sometimes do hand building, or I would do kurinoki because that's a little looser. And that kind of keeps me from being rigid and so clinical and that kind of thing.
Yeah. I was thinking of a question with that and I've just lost it. I don't know what it was. Nope, it's gone. Maybe it'll come back. Well, what are there potters as they're just starting out that ask you, are there any kind of questions that you wish you would have known before you got started?
I think here, pottery is still a kind of exclusive club. We have the traditional potters in Chigwanas. That's one of the central boroughs in Trinidad. And they do traditional East Indian pottery. But for things like I am the only soda fire here. Yeah. Another potter that I know, she works mostly with molds. Bunty is still doing clay, but she is doing sculptural clay. So, and the other three potters that I know, they have all migrated and they reside in Canada. I'm the only person who does what I do. So it's not a case, it won't be a case where I have young and upcoming potters coming to me and asking me, about, people might reach out and ask me questions about, can this clay be done this, or how can I get that, that kind of thing. But I won't have anybody right now asking me those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
And then the nice thing was that when I started with clay, Bunty immediately took me under her wing.
I was curious, how did that get started?
I can't remember how Bunty and I met. We met while I was painting at Art Society, exhibition at Art Society. And when I started working with clay, I had to reach out to her for, I think it was just to ask her a question or whatever. And when she realized that, I had started working with clay and throwing on the wheel and doing that, she called me one day and she said, Greta, I'm cleaning out my studio here. I have some things. Come and get it. Bring buckets.
Bring buckets.
When I got there, when I got there, she gave me glazed material, cones. She just loaded me up.
Yeah.
And she was having her open studio that November, because she always used to have it in November. And she said, all right, I'm having open studio in November. You bring some pieces and put them out to sell. I didn't really understand what she was saying. So I brought a few pieces. I was late for that first studio. I was late. And, I just brought like a few pieces. It was only when I got there that I fully understood what her open studio was really like. Yeah, and she took me under her wing. So anytime I had a question, I could ask her, and even if I didn't ask a question, she would, guide me and say, well, this should do and that should do, and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. That's what I feel like. There's so many, and these are the things that, as much as I try and tear apart, how does this work? How did this happen? How, right? Like take the clock apart and find all the pieces. There's the relationship part of it isn't something that necessarily can be created or formulaic or anything like that, but it does seem crucial to any artist. I mean, whether it's ceramic it doesn't matter the medium really, like to that development and that growth piece that I think is hard to find online. Yes, we've built a relationship over Instagram and things over time, but it's not that depth that you get being able to stop at somebody else's studio, or just that different type of thing that I don't know yet where other people in ceramics specifically, but other mediums after you've left school and outside of that, aside from your community studios and your community art centers, how people can seek out those relationships in an organic way, but also in a very intentional, like, acknowledgement of like, hey, I need this. I need mentorship. Where can I find it?
Yeah. And actually, since by the end of last year, when the demand for my work grew, I decided that I would need to have maybe some help, So I had decided to take on an apprentice. But because of the situation here, I haven't been really able to do that, to follow up on that, to follow through on that. But as soon as I can, I want to have somebody, even if they come in once a day or for a few hours a day, where I can teach them about what I do, how I do it. So if they are really interested and they want to start, they can have that, that kind of foundation, that kind of support. Because when I started, I had that support.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just from Bunty. Adam Williams, he is in Canada now, but he was also very helpful, very supportive, even now. Even though he's in Canada, he still reaches out and checks up on me, and we check up on each other.
Well, and it sounds like to me all of the relationships that I have been able to build also, and it sounds like similar to you, is in putting yourself out there into these community spaces or taking a class from someone, paying someone for their time, and then that grows a relationship that then is much bigger than, you know, that one day workshop or that 1 week workshop or whatever, you know, the one session at the community studio, like that's just the beginning that then opens up the doors, it seems.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things about clay too. You can't be involved in clay. You can't be involved in pottery and not form that community and not have that kind of community happening. Even for introverts, you still develop a community because clay is community. Clay is about, making things to share a communal meal or share a cup of coffee or tea with somebody. Yeah, so it will be very difficult for somebody who is in clay to say that they don't have a community, I think.
Well, and it's, to me at least, it's integral to that growth, not only from a business ownership standpoint, from being able to ask somebody, hey, how did you manage the cost of shipping or whatever, but also, like you were saying, just the feedback from your husband, like being able to be like, why did you, like the loving critical feedback that drives us all farther forward and improves our crafts.
Yes, definitely. I think it's necessary. It's necessary for any business owner, any budding business owner or seasoned business owner to have that kind of support, that kind of feedback.
We need to find a way to make a little like online forum thing. My mission, I feel like right now, is to figure out ways to connect with people online that's not a Facebook group. Like the last thing, as we're having this conversation, I'm like, okay, how can we bring people together now? But the last thing I want to do is make a Facebook group because I'm so over Facebook.
I don't want any more. Yeah, I don't want any more Facebook groups. I'm good.
No.
I'm really good.
And there's ones out there and they're great, but like it's just too much. Like I can't log into Facebook and go immediately to a group. There's so many distractions, and I really, like you were saying, that gift, the weird gift of the last year and a half has been being able to have more time in your home and slowing down and thinking about what you're doing. And I'm trying my best to guard that now that the US is reopened and apparently has forgotten that this ever existed and still is existing in many other countries. But that's a different story for a different podcast again. Oh gosh. Greta, where can everybody find you online, see your work, check out this awesome soda kiln?
I'm online at Art by Greta Michelle on Instagram. My website is gretamichelleJ.com. That I'm doing some maintenance on that right now, so they probably won't find it. Well, they'll find it, but not find it.
Yeah.
And of course, my Facebook page. Art by Greta Michelle.
That's hilarious. So just Instagram then. Mostly just Instagram. I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time. It was so great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for asking me. I really enjoyed spending time talking with you.
Okay.
And I hope to do it again.
Absolutely. You have to tell me when when you walk out of the school and say, all right, I'm done. We're deep diving on a conversation.
It's a date.
No pressure, but when I talked to Diana from Sample House, between the time we recorded and then the episode went live, she quit her job. So I'm just...
Yes, I was privy because we follow each other on Instagram.
Yeah.
And we're part of Cabo Collective. So I knew the day that she left, and I was like so jealous. I was happy and so jealous all at the same time.
That had absolutely nothing to do with me, but I'm just saying if I can put the mojo out there, be some completely common thread, we'll get you there.
Taking it all.
Thank you. All right, we'll talk soon.
All right, bye. That wraps up episode 202
of the Maker's Playbook. And I don't think I need to explain to all of you who are out there busting your butt to side hustle your work or daydreaming at your desk the day that you can quit and go full time. I'm pretty sure I don't have to explain to you the importance of growing your audience, do I? You get it. You're out there doing the same thing. So, if you've been enjoying the podcast, you can probably see where this is going. I would immensely appreciate it if you did two things. First off, well, I guess this is step 0. Wipe the mud off your hands. I'll wait. Alright, now that your hands are clean and you can touch your phone, hit pause on this episode, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast inside whatever app you're using to listen. But especially if you're using Apple Podcasts, because the Apple algorithm robots love themselves a 5-star review. All right, then once you tap on those 5 stars, I'd love it if you took a screenshot of this episode and shared it on your favorite social media platform to tell more maker friends all about it. Be sure to tag me at The Maker's Playbook and Greta so that we can say a huge, huge thank you. Until next week, go get back to making your dreams a reality, because together, we've got this.